Hi, I'm Ethan Chase, and a New York-based organization development coach, and I'm really excited today for this teaching video to talk about the incredible power of an employee stock ownership plan. And so in my 20 plus years in the private sector and then the last 15 years coaching organizations how to grow, I can say unequivocally that one of the strongest strategies that an organization can employ to create the kind of employee commitment, engagement in the organization is to hand over control to them by allowing them to own a portion, if not the entirety, of the organization. There is no other tool in the organizational structure toolkit that is as effective as employee stock ownership plan participations that encourages employees to take ownership of the success of the organization, to hold themselves accountable and each other, their fellow employees, to take on true control over what they're responsible for. So I want to spend today's video talking about employee stock ownership plans to set in motion in your head, your mind, and in your organization, a conversation around if you don't currently do this, or if you've been talking about forming some sort of an employee stock ownership plan program, to go from the talking to the action. So let's jump right into some key background into what it is. I really want to just kind of frame this for you to be comfortable in what an ESOP or an employee stock ownership plan is all about. So it's a tax qualified retirement plan that's authorized by your leadership team, your ownership, and encouraged by federal tax law and pension laws. So unlike other retirement plans, and I'm on the Employee Ownership Foundation, their website, which is a go-to resource for anybody who owns a business or is in an organization and thinking about an ESOP solution. So unlike most retirement plans, an ESOP is required by law to invest primarily in the shares of stock of the sponsoring employer. So employees legally are accountable for investing in their organization. They are what we refer to as trusts that hold employee shares of the business for the employees, making the employee beneficial owner of the company that employs them. Think about that. Think about that for a moment. An ESOP is entirely intended to, as an organizational structure, be something that the employee invests all of their energy, their time, commitment, their expertise, their energy. It also, an ESOP, provides tax benefits to the company and to the exiting owner. So from an ownership perspective, if you're thinking about transitioning out of the organization, it's a phenomenally powerful benefit to you to set up an ESOP as well. And so there is a significant amount of financial justification from the existing ownership, as well as all of your employees, to go down this road. And I'll talk a little bit more. I'll show you some examples of organizations that have successfully done this kind of structure. And what we also know in terms of organizational development is that some of the most successful organizations all over the world, not just in the United States, but all over the world, when they go to an employee ownership program, they outperform financially their competitors. So let's talk a little bit more about an ESOP. So how do you set it up? Again, staying on the Employee Ownership Foundation website, I want to walk you through how you set this up. And it's important to follow the steps that are required. So here's what we want to talk through. A company that's interested in going down this road of an ESOP plan, you have a number of different options that are available to you to create, tailor a plan that's best suited to the company's particular needs and goals. So it's not a one size fits all. You can basically develop an ESOP that's based on where your business is right now and where you want to take it in the future. So, for example, a large publicly traded company might make very different design choices in putting together its ESOP plan than a privately owned company, right? Just different models, different wants and needs. So I'm going to walk you through some of the considerations as you think through how you want to go about creating an employee stock ownership plan. So most companies are going to engage a consultant to work with the management team to take a look. It's a feasibility assessment of the ESOP for that organization that's considering it. So the ESOP Association website actually has a list of ESOP consultants. So if you want to go down that road, I don't specialize in that area, but there is a resource. There's a list of ESOP employees on the ESOP Association website. So the consultant will work with the company to take a look at what the equity value is, the intended equity value, for figuring out the feasibility and designing the ESOP plan that way. Other times, the consultant is going to work with a valuation firm. So you're going to bring in two experts, the ESOP consultant or consulting firm and a valuation firm that the company, your organization, engages to estimate the value of the enterprise, right? That's where you want to be first. You have to have a starting understanding of what the value of your organization is. So the consultant, usually with an ESOP attorney, there's another resource that's available to you to engage as you bring together this team of experts to make this decision. So the consultant, the ESOP consultant, working with an ESOP attorney that you hire, you engage, will work with you to design the specific provisions of the ESOP itself. So here's some of the questions that you want to prepare for. You want to start to think about and consider as you're planning out whether this is a viable path forward in terms of giving control through ownership of your organization, a portion of it to what percentage of the total of the worth of your organization, who's going to participate in the plan? How is the stock going to be allocated to your employees who are participating in it? What vesting schedule is going to apply to any employer contribution to the plan? So go to the ESOP Association website. They have actually briefs that walk you through some of these considerations. How will the distribution of your ESOP plan accounts be handled? So how are you going to disperse them to your employee owners? How are voting rights going to be handled? Will the ESOP have an internal trustee or a professional independent trustee to maintain the administrative and legal considerations and decisions that are needed for your plan? So these are just some of the starting considerations that you want to think through, but allow me to say this as I dive into a little bit more detail about the how. The question that I kind of skirted over by intent, but intentionally, is the should we? Why should we? I'm not going to sit and hammer away at you need to do this because it's ethical, because it's truly the only lasting competitive advantage you can offer your people. It is the singular most successful strategy to employ to create employee ownership, engagement, accountability, motivation. We know, right? We know in the field of organizational design, organizational study, that it is an incredibly powerful way. In fact, it may be one of the only truly lasting competitive strategies, we call it a competitive advantage, that your organization can offer, is to give up control of your organization. So having said that, I'm going to dive into a little bit more of the how to establish it. So there's different kinds of plans. I'm going to walk you through two of them. When a stock's price rises above the option exercise price, the employee gets the company's stock at a discount. The employee can choose to sell your organization stock in the open market, or they can choose to hold on to it. So there are two kinds of plans. An incentive stock option, or the ISO, it's known as a qualified option or a statutory option. It's only offered to top employees and management. These select employees can purchase company shares at a discounted price with the benefit of potential tax breaks on the profit. If they wait at least 2 years after being granted the shares, they'll be taxed for long-term capital gains instead of short-term. Which, bear with me a second, just want to get something out of the way. If they wait at least 2 years after being granted the shares, they'll be taxed for long-term capital gains instead of short time, leading to hugely different tax rates. So that's the first, is the ISO. The second kind of employee stock ownership plan is a non-qualified stock option. And what that means is an NSO isn't just for the employee, but for investors, partners, and vendors. So it expands the offering outside of your employee stakeholder group to other people who have interaction, involvement, business dealings with your organization. It's known as a non-statutory stock option, and the NSOs don't allow workers to have favorable tax treatment. It flows through to the wage and tax statements as an ordinary income tax. So those are the two different kinds of plans. So I'm not going to talk to you about the nitty-gritty or any of the particular details other than to direct you to the Employee Stock Owner Plan Association website as a starting point to gather up the materials you'll need. Once you do decide that this is literally the most powerful strategic option you have in terms of your people development initiatives. So just wanted to walk through the what it is and the how it is first. So once you decide to go down this road, once you go through all the logistical considerations, you bring in all the requisite experts, you have kind of an ESOP development team that you put together with external as well as internal resources, and you do all of this kind of planning, you're going to need to factor in a critical role into this team. And that's assigning somebody inside your organization or having some kind of tool or resource like an equity management software plan to manage the cap tables for the IRS guidelines and reporting on an annual basis. Well, on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. The right capitalization table software could prevent costly mistakes due to manual errors. So it's definitely something that you have to think about as you're adding into your mix of different resources that you're going to need to make this determination if you want the ESOP. And then assuming you do decide it's a path forward for you, it's a tool that's going to be leveraged in maintaining it. So let's talk a little bit about making the ESO offer. So there's an organization, Founder Shield, and that's the website we're on, who do these kinds of things. At Founder Shield, we'd recommend working with a well-versed attorney and an experienced accountant to assist with confirming employees' residency, work visa status before you offer those employees participation, an option to participate in the plan. Doing so will reduce the likelihood of potential issues, legal or otherwise, down the road. So there are a few other things that you want to, on your checklist of to-dos, you want to make sure you maintain. So you want to declare the type of stock option the employee is going to receive. We talked about the ISO and the NSO option. Explain the value in terms of the number of shares, always the number of shares rather than the percent of the company. State that the board, your board, must approve all stock option grant amounts before the offer letter is legally valid. Make sure that employees understand any and all tax implications that are associated with their equity compensation. This is why you want an ESOP, an attorney who's well-versed in these plans. You want an accountant who's well-versed. You want a consulting firm or consulting individual with expertise in this domain. You want to bring together your ESOP plan development team of experts. And you want to remember to deliver a final executed copy of the agreement to any and all employees who are invited to participate in the plan, as well as then to dive into the legal considerations. I'm not going to get into them, but there are a number of different considerations to what we call the directors and officers insurance. And again, I'm not going to get into it, but it's here on the foundershield.com website if you're interested in going down that road. So we talked about the what it is. I kind of went through at a really high level. And I talked about the kind of structure and the kind of resources you're going to need to pool together to make a determination if you want to go down this road. But who's doing it? Who's your reference? Who's your North Star? What are organizations that have already made a commitment to their employees and have gone down this road? Well, I'll start out by saying, for starters, they exist all over the world. They do, in every country. There are organizations that have gone down the ESOP path of empowering their employees through genuine ownership control of the organization that they decide to work for. And the question is, do you want to interview some of these organizations to make sure if this is part of a right decision for your organization to go down? Canada, companies like Ellis Don and Morrison Hershfield and Hatch. India, many, many, many organizations, especially in the tech corridor in southern India. A lot of organizations in India have decided to go down this road. Japan, the Nikkei, Scandinavia. And again, the number of organizations that have committed to this varies by country, by culture, by legal business structure. Check out the UK. There are lots of organizations. And then I wanted to just on Wikipedia's site about ESOP plans, I want to go into the United States. You can see that the list is quite robust. Many, many, many organizations here in the United States have made the strategic decision from a people initiative standpoint that are enabling their employees to have ownership, some percent, whether it's partial to majority to complete, they have control and ownership over the organization that they work for. So having said that, the fact that this is an international business objective, I want to kind of share with you a few key background statistics on this. So some background data on ESOPs. We know that here in the United States, there are approximately 10,000 ESOP plans, which covers 10.3 million employees, which is about 10% of the private sector workforce is covered by these kind of employee stock ownership plans. What are some key considerations in terms of if you decide to go forward with an ESOP plan for your people? The size of the company's annual contribution to its ESOP is a key factor in determining the extent to which the ESOP has a positive impact on employee owners' attitudes towards their work. What does that mean? We know that as the greater the percent contribution ownership of your organization with employees, there is a similar commensurate increase in their satisfaction, their engagement, their commitment to the organization. So the more you allow them to own it, the more they're going to take ownership in it. There's no precise way to measure the number of ESOPs in the US, since the overwhelming majority of them are privately held, and they don't have to file public reports with the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission. We know that 3% or 330 ESOPs are in publicly traded company. 5,000 ESOP companies are majority owned by the ESOP. So that means 5,000 have more than 50% ownership of the company through its people. 4,000 organizations are 100% owned by employees. So while ESOPs are found in pretty much all industries and sectors, there is a big, robust amount, 22%, that can be found in the manufacturing sector. Interesting. An overwhelming majority of ESOP companies have other retirement and/or savings plans, such as a defined benefit pension plan or a 401k plan that supplements the ESOP. So this is some background information from the online MBA rankings.com, America's top 10 ESOPs. So there is a list on this site. I'm not going to go through all of the top 10, but I want to focus on Publix. Publix in Lakeland, Florida. The largest employee-owned firm in America is Florida-based grocery company Publix. The supermarket's also the 7th largest private firm in the United States with $27.5 billion in sales. Yet it manages to run a smooth and growing operation with an employee-owned fund that controls 80% of the company at Publix. Since its inception, its closely held stock has risen by more than 19% a year, twice as fast as the S&P 500. Publix ranks among the 100 best companies to work for in America. I have a contention. That is this. Employees who work in organizations that have some kind of ESOP plan in place are more satisfied than employees in competing firms in their respective industries. So if you have an organization that has some semblance of, you have some ESOP plan in place, you're going to, by de facto consideration, you're going to have employees who are more engaged, they're more empowered, they're more responsible for owning the work product, they're more meticulous about collaborative work, being engaged, working in team building, self-directed teams, all the things you've heard me talk about in literally hundreds of videos can be found in organizations that have ESOP plans. So the top 10 ESOP plans in the United States is Publix in Florida, and then you have Hy-Vee in Des Moines, Iowa, another organization founded 94 years ago by Charles Hyde and David Vredenberg in Iowa, has grown into an employee-owned chain of 235 supermarkets with 56,000 employee owners located throughout the Midwest United States. In Iowa, Illinois, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. Phenomenal. Damon Worldwide in Connecticut, the third largest ESOP. 54 years ago, Peter Damon Schwartz and Milt Sender shook hands on a partnership deal that produced Damon Associates in New York City. Their goal was to maximize the market potential of private brand products, which in 1970 were rarely marketed to attract consumers, suggest quality, or differentiate one real retailer from another. The company name was taken on Peter's middle name, and the partnership formed the basis of what has become the leading full-service global private brand and consumer interactions company with 36,000 associates working in over 200 offices in more than 49 countries on 6 continents. So you can see that if you're interested in going forward with this employee stock ownership plan model, there are many examples that abound, not just here in the United States, but all over the world. My suggestion is you consider doing the following. If you've been thinking about this, there is no time like the present. So, we have the silent quitting society of work. We have younger professionals. You've heard me say this before, Gen Zs and younger millennials who are taking over the primary percent of the workforce, at least here in the United States. Boomers and matures are retiring by the thousands every day in the American workforce. The landscape is now being reconstituted, reformed by employees who want and expect a different relationship with your organization. So as people are now leaving jobs, not just every few years, but every few months, it's getting harder and harder to retain top talent. Then there's this. There is the notion of no stronger force that keeps employees committed to an organization than if they have blood, sweat, and tears equity in the game. And that's an employee stock ownership plan. So if you like what I had to say in this video, if you like the kind of videos and content that I'm putting forward on a pretty regular basis, please smash the like button. Feel free to share this with other people on your leadership team. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, support the work that I'm doing and my consulting practice, helping organizations to unleash their people's untapped potential. Thanks for joining today, and I look forward to sharing other critically important topics with you on people empowerment and culture transformation for your organization. Take care.